So what are we going to look at? Inverse trig derivatives. That's okay. The derivatives of inverse trig functions. That's okay. That's cool. Right. It's cool. Well, this mainly is just a way that I remember these derivatives, and I tried it out. I tried to remember them, and then I did. So like it's hopefully a good way. Maybe you can use the same thinking to help you remember these inverse trig derivatives. So what do I do? Well, the first trig function that I think of always is sine. That's really the first thing that I'm going to always think of. I don't know why. Maybe that's just because that's the way it was introduced to me. So the first inverse trig derivative would be arcsine or sine inverse. The same thing. So I think, what is that? And then the next part I kind of just remember somewhat. I know that I have 1 over something, and it's going to be the square root of and some stuff in here. It's actually 1 minus x squared. And I think, in my brain, I think, okay, well, sine is the first thing that I remember, so the 1 comes first. That's something to help me. And then I know that it has a square root and a fraction or something like that. But I know, because all of these are kind of similar, so to remember the differences, I always think of sine first, so the 1 comes first. It's 1 minus x squared. And then, I guess the next thing I'm going to think of is the derivative of cosine inverse. And we can use our patterns from before. This is actually going to be the same thing as sine, except for it has that co sound. So then we have a negative. So it's the same thing, except for I have -1 in the top, and then the rest is exactly the same. And that's because, for me, in my brain, I think of that co sound. So sine is the first thing I think of, so the 1 comes first. And it's important that the 1 comes first because we have subtraction. If the x came first, then we'd have something else. So that's the first two. And then the next one, sine, cosine, the next normal thing would be tangent. So let's look at the derivative of inverse tangent. Now this is very similar to the first two. It's going to have an x squared. It's going to have a 1 in the top. It's going to have a 1 in the bottom somehow. But something that I just remember is that there is no square root. That's one thing. And then also, tangent starts with a t, and the t looks like a plus sign. So that's how I remember that I have 1 plus x squared. And in fact, it doesn't matter whether the x squared comes first or the 1 comes first, because it's addition. So I just keep it the same way as that. But it's plus. That's plus because of the t. In my brain, that's how I remember it. Oh, it's inverse tangent. Okay, I'm going to have a plus sign here instead of subtraction. And then the other part is just remembering that there is no square root. Okay, then what comes next? Well, if I have sine, cosine with a co sound, I'm going to have tangent and then cotangent. So I actually specifically remember it in this order, and it helps me get everything. Once again, I have this co sound. So it's going to be the same as this, but negative. So, I mean, it just follows that pattern. So really, I remember this one, and I just don't remember that one at all. I just use this. I remember this one, and I don't remember that one at all. I just use this. So that would be same thing, except for a -1 in the top. 1 plus x squared. And then, okay, the last thing would be, well, if I'm going to follow this pattern, then cosecant would be over here. That means here would be secant, or sorry, inverse cosecant and then inverse secant. And then something that helps me remember is it's almost exactly the same as this, except for, remember I said that sine is the first thing I think of, so the 1 comes first. Well, this one's opposite. I just have 1 over the square root of x squared minus 1. So it's the opposite of this. And then I think, well, why does it really matter that the x comes first and that the 1 comes last? And the answer is yes, because we have subtraction there. So it changes the sign if we do it in a different order. So there we go. And then the next one, I don't. So really, I just remember 3 of these, and then 3 come for free. Again, this has that co sound, so this will be the same as this, but negative. So, oh wait, no, this one's a weird one. This one's a weird one. I almost messed it up. Well, I did mess it up, but I remembered. Why is this one a weird one? This is actually also something that I just remember. I have the absolute value of x, and it's in the bottom there. So this one is the same thing. I'll have a -1, then the absolute value of x, and then that same square root. So it'll be x squared minus 1. So I guess, yeah, that's one piece to remember. I remember the order of this because sine comes first, so the 1 comes first there. This just can't be the same. And then tangent, it looks like a little plus sign. So there we go. Those are the trig derivatives. I encourage you, every time you're trying to do a problem, to not look at your formula sheet, or if you have one, or just not look at your notes, to try and remember these formulas. Maybe actually before you start the homework, spend like a minute or two trying to memorize them, and then try and do your homework without looking. I'm covering my paper that I have, and I'm but you can't see that. Because then the more you try to remember, the better you will be at remembering. All right, I'm done.